Welcome to the Got Any Cows podcast. If you want to learn all you can about the beef cattle industry, this is the podcast for you. My name is Seth Christensen. My company has sent beef cattle genetics to 45 of the 50 states and 12 countries around the world. I've had the chance to learn from some of the best and brightest in the beef cattle industry, and I invite you to join me for those conversations here on the Got Any Cows podcast. Hey guys, this is Seth Christensen with the Got Any Cows podcast. I appreciate you guys being here today. I wanted to bring to your attention the new things that we have added to the Christensen Genetics website. You can get there by going to gotanycows.com. So the name of this podcast, gotanycows.com, will take you straight to the Christensen Genetics website. On the website, we are listing all of our newest embryo transfer pregnancies. Embryo transfer pregnancies are the most popular thing we sell here at Christensen Genetics, and for good reason. People that want the best of the best, but at the best price, buy embryo transfer pregnancies. What you'll receive if you purchase an embryo transfer pregnancy from Christensen Genetics is an Angus cow at your ranch, confirmed pregnant, with an Akaushi heifer calf that is the result of embryo transfer. Now, one of the things I want to point out here is that these Angus females that are carrying these Akaushi calves are the best of the best. These are personally sorted by me for disposition. You know you'll get a quality young cow here with known history, known vaccination protocol, known genetic makeup, known age, known everything, and the job is done for you. Rather than having to worry about acquiring donors, acquiring semen, running an ET program, getting these animals confirmed pregnant, finding out whether or not it's male or female, seeing if it does or doesn't stick. We take care of all of that. We have top-notch Angus recipient cows that receive embryos from the best of the best donors, from industry-leading studs. Those embryos are transferred, confirmed pregnant, and then we look by ultrasound to confirm that you do indeed have a heifer calf coming. At that point in time, we include shipping to your ranch as part of the purchase price. You're able to get into most of these pregnancies at that $6,000 mark, and we can even do better than that for a volume purchase. At that point in time, you make that purchase, let me know this is the mating I want. We'll send you an invoice. As soon as it's paid, we'll schedule to get that cow to your ranch, and we'll guarantee that she carries that Akaushi heifer calf to term. We'll guarantee that that baby DNAs to the parents listed, and you are going to have a top-notch Angus cow, a top-notch Akaushi heifer calf at your ranch at the best price point in the industry for what you're getting. So I'd invite you guys to take a look, gotanycows.com. Go to the Christensen Genetics website, go to that Build Your Herd drop-down tab at the top, look at the pregnancies page, and look at all of the matings we have. Please reach out, shoot me a text at 208-589-9988, and let's get the best of the best Akaushi heifer pregnancies headed to your ranch. We're here for another episode of the Got Any Cows podcast. I'm excited to be here with my friend Travis Jones from Independence Cattle Company. Travis, if you would, please go ahead and fill us in on a little bit of who you are, where you're from, and how we ended up sitting here together in Kansas City.
Absolutely, man. Well, listen, I appreciate you asking me to be on. It's an honor again. Love what you do. When I kind of got into it, you opened yourself up for advice without knowing who I was and everything as a whole. So glad to appreciate being here and the opportunity to know you and to share and give back. But yeah, I'm a seventh generation Texan. Was very blessed to have been raised on a piece of property that's been in my family for 150 years.
That's awesome.
Thank you. And so we've stayed on. It's of course shrunk over time with the generations that have come and gone, and inheritance and selling off. But you know, we're 3 miles down the road from Heartbrand actually. And
oh, really? It's right there.
Yeah, right there. And so, but we started, commercial cattle as a kid. One of my first memories was working with my grandfather. Raising cattle, and it just, the bug hit me early, right? And it's stuck with me. But
what kind of cattle did he have at that point in time?
At that point in time, we had Brahman cross, Hereford crosses. That was kind of the predominant sort of F1 type commercial cross.
Tiger
Being
stripes.
in Texas, that tiger stripe type cow was one that we had, and he ran some Angus on him, and I don't know if it was just the genetics he got or what, but he was never really happy with them.
Gotcha.
And so we happened to buy a few Beefmaster bulls, and he just fell in love with that breed, and everything about them, and just the growth and the look, and just just the beauty of those cows, which they can be real pretty cows. But so we moved from commercial into seed stock, probably I would say, gosh, maybe late 80s, early 90s. And and so did that for about 30 years. Well, maybe 25 years, so give or take. But his health started to decline. I'm not, unfortunately, fortunate enough to do it full time.
Sure.
And
sure.
so
Most aren't.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's totally normal.
Absolutely. And so, like, I think I represent almost 80% of the industry, unfortunately. I'm working towards that 20%, but not quite there yet. But definitely working towards that. But he got sick. Ultimately, the herd, we sold off quite a bit of them, held a few back for commercial. Brought in, just started buying some Angus cattle and started moving over to Angus, and was fortunate enough that during the pandemic, had a bunch of them on feed, and so we
That is fortunate.
Yeah, it was. My goal there was just let's just put them on feed and see what they do, and I'll sell them probably as fats to somebody. And then I started getting calls about beef. The grocery stores were out of beef, and they didn't have much, and so I was like, maybe I started looking into it, and learned very late about private label and independent cutting and processing, USDA processing. And so during the pandemic, we started rolling, and we started selling to some of the most affluent areas in Austin, Texas, and had some really great friends reach out to buy. And so as we were looking, how do we improve this product? How do we improve the beef that we make and what we do? I was doing a bunch of research and kept coming across Akaushi and kept coming across. And fortunately, and funny enough, as I was looking into it, there was the name Heart Brand, and I was like, wait a minute, I think they're right down the road from me. Yeah. And as a kid, funny story I tell people, I had a motorcycle as a kid, and I used to drive around the back roads all the time. Sure. And I remember I'd worked on that ranch that the Beemans own now. Yeah. And as a kid, when a guy named Jeff Davis owned it, and I drove back there and I saw Heart Brand on it, and I swear, I thought like some cardiologist bought this ranch and named it Heart Brand, after what he did. That was my thought, and I didn't think anything about what it could have been. And so I discovered Akaushi on that quest, and kind of went into partnership on a bull with a friend of mine, and just kind of got the bug from there. Liked the growth, liked the marbling, loved the product. Bought a few actual F1s from a friend of mine who wasn't a friend at the time, but became a friend now, and started feeding those up and out. And man, once we got that product, my wife was very, I'm not going to say against it, but she didn't understand.
Sure. So why are you writing all of these really large checks for all sorts of random cow things?
Exactly. We're doing so good with it. This Angus beef is incredible. What are we doing that? Of course, coming from the Beefmaster, when we would process a few, it was a significant improvement. Right. And that very first steak, I'll never forget, when she had it, she was like, okay, now I get it. Right. I get now why this makes sense. Yeah. And so we kind of caught the bug, and so now we are working towards some good plans in the future, and excited about the future of this breed, and where we think we can, make an impact, not only in the breed itself, but in our ranch and operation. So
yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you filling us in there and kind of giving us the background and how you got to here. And one of the things I appreciate about you, Travis, is that you've got that background. You've spent your life around cattle. You understand what it takes to be a good one, regardless of breed. And I think that's a valuable perspective. And I appreciate you being willing to share the information you have. And like you've done on Facebook with your free advice Fridays, I appreciate you sharing those. And there's been a lot of positive feedback to those. And I think it's good, just like you mentioned, free advice is worth what you pay for it, but it's good that exchange of information, as far as people being willing to share what they know. And I appreciate that you've been willing to do that. So if we jump back a little bit to your Beefmaster days, and like I was mentioning, I didn't even know the exact name of them, but the six essentials and things like that. Walk us through a little bit of what makes, I guess, a good animal, regardless of breed. And even if you want to jump into those 6 essentials, if you happen to remember those kind of off the top of your head, or how that Beefmaster background maybe ties into your evaluation of what makes a good one today, even though you're in a different breed.
Absolutely. And, I'm going to go back to something you said a minute ago. I would never insult a cattleman by saying I'm a cattleman by any stretch of the imagination. But I have been around long enough to have seen what works and what at least works for me.
Sure.
And I'll tell you that 6 essentials they talk about, and again, I'll probably get them wrong, but, it's just a list of exactly what is an expectation of the breed, and it really is. As you talk about, that it's like fertility, conformation, hardiness, docility, milking ability, maternal traits, and I forget the last one. I'm sure I'll get chastised by my friends if any of them watch this later. But it's just basically making sure that you're checking all the boxes on every single animal you've got. And so, I was fortunate in the breed as we're talking about, how people build their programs. And so I've taken a lot of what I learned in Beefmaster, what worked and what didn't, and how I've seen people succeed and people fail. And I see so many new breeders that, we may not have a way. I think sometimes information is definitely power, right? And it's a commodity. And a lot of people sit on it, and if we can at least give each other advice to help. If my post that little post I do, if it helps one person, man, that's beneficial to me. And so I focus on essentially replicating those 6 essentials here, and I would add marbling and carcass to that, of course, and the things that we know we get out of this breed. But to me, if you don't have conformation, right? If they don't look good, again, when you peel the hide back, that's really what matters. Right. But let's start with the good-looking cattle, because that's going to attract people right away, right? And they've got to be structurally correct too, for various reasons. But you want that docility, that fertility, that milking ability, and when you find it in the cattle, you want to replicate it. And so, interestingly enough, I was able to see several programs in the Beefmaster breed where they didn't go out and buy 150 cows, or they bought 2 donors. Right. And they started replicating those 2 donors that checked the box, and they would breed with daughters off of that and complement to do that. And I'll give a nod to Stephen Borland, who I think has done that with us here. And Stephen's built off of just a very small number of cows and has built an entire program off that. And so I think when you identify those traits that make a great cow, I think replicating that as frequently and often as you can. To me, there's no need to go out and get 75 animals, because I've got what I need here. Now, eventually I want to get to that number out of daughters, out of those females, and granddaughters, because we know those traits work. Right. And so that has been just a foundation of what I do. You're absolutely right in learning that, and I've been fortunate to have that experience.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think one of the things I appreciate about Lassiter's approach to breeding cattle and building the Beefmaster breed was that he had a direction and he stuck to it. And and again, this is from a novice from outside the breed. I have no Beefmaster background, but just in studying that story, I really appreciate that he decided this is where we're going to go. And he'd say, like, I don't really even care what color they are, or horns, no horns. I care if they put a carcass on the rail and if they do so efficiently as a cow. And I think identifying what it is that matters to a breeder, breeding for that, culling based on that, marketing that finished, the 6 essentials, right? That was spelled out exactly what he was chasing. And even for me, as I look at my program and how I've established kind of what we breed for in my program, it's been helpful for me not to necessarily breed for those exact same targets, but to take that same idea or that same premise of this is what matters to me. It may not matter to my next door neighbor. It may not matter to anyone else. But for me, in my program, for us, it is, and some are the same and some are different than what Tom Lassiter would have been chasing, but it is docility, fertility, calving ease, growth, marbling, longevity. For me, those are my 6 essentials. Now, there will be people that will agree with that. There will be people that would change the order of priority. There would be people that cut one out and add another. But I think defining what it is you're breeding for is what makes a program a program. regardless of what I choose for selection criteria or you or any other breeder. And I think that's the strength of the association, or of all of us maybe having a little different selection criteria or maybe a little different approach. We are going to breed some different cattle that are going to do some different things well. But I think if people can define what it is they're chasing, you can't get there if you don't know where you want to go. Absolutely. And so I appreciate that example from Tom Lassiter.
Yeah, and a couple of things, just talking about, the people that had 2 donors and built off of that. I would love to have 25 donors and move through it. But as we talked about before, 80% of the industry is a small breeder, right? And that's where we find ourselves. That's where I am right now and where we're growing. So I definitely appreciate that. And again, you're right. It doesn't matter what the traits are. It's how you define them. But I'll tell you one thing that comes to mind when we talk about that. You've mentioned it. These are the traits that I need. Yeah. I've said these are the traits that I want too.
Right. Yeah.
The biggest mistake I've seen people make, and I just beg people not to do this, single trait selection will not only kill a breed, it'll kill a program. Oh, yeah. And breeding just for what's on paper because you like a bull or you think that it's special will absolutely murder you long term. Oh, yeah. And so I see so many new breeders doing that, and I've been very blessed by just reaching out. People reach out to me on Facebook and talk to me about things, and I never pretend to know any more than anybody else. And like I said, I'd never call myself a cattleman by insulting a cattleman to do so. But I do know enough to know that you've got to have that. You've got to have that balanced approach. Yeah. You've got to have a balanced animal. And the other thing I always tell people to do that you have to do, and what I know you've done, what I've done, is you got to make a plan. You got to write it down. You got to know what you're breeding for, what you're guiding for, and let that keep you in the lanes that you steer in. Yeah. It's very easy in this breed to be pulled to the right, to the left, and next thing you know, now I'm going to breed some pole cattle. Well, now I'm going to breed some I like that bull, so I'm going to breed with that bull. And that's not what you should do, right? You should know your plan, understand your plan, and that's going to keep you in the lane for doing where you are. And you've done that very well on a big scale or a larger scale. I'm trying to do it and get to there, but so many of us I see not doing that on a small scale. And I think those on a small scale, it's almost, I'm not going to say more important. When you're a small breeder, you can't afford to make those mistakes. You've got to have that defined plan. You've got to have those. You've got to know what you're breeding for. And like you said, whether I switch 1 or 2 of those things in and out, you know what you're breeding for. And you know how to take that to market. And I think that's the important part of what you just said. So kudos to you for that, man.
Absolutely. No, and I appreciate that. And that's what I'm excited to see, as you develop your program and build out your program and you're deciding you're going to plug in this or that or the other in any given direction. I'm excited to see what you make of your cattle. I'm excited to see what direction you take that program. And I feel the same for each program that decides hey, I'm going to get these cattle together. I'm going to define where I'm trying to go, and then I watch them chase that and remain consistent and remain focused. And obviously, there's adjustments along the way for any of us with whatever it is we're doing. You're going to make tweaks, make adjustments. I'm going to learn something this week that's going to make a tweak on how I'm going to do things going forward. If I don't, I'll get left behind too. You know what I mean? It's a matter of learning and adjusting, but we're fine tuning it. I'm not flipping around and going back the opposite direction. We're making minor adjustments. So going back, you and I, when we first started talking and when we got acquainted, so I work in both Akaushi and Angus, just like you have historically. Walk me through kind of those couple of breeds, Akaushi and Angus, some of the pros and cons of both, because I think for both you and I, a commonality we share is that we can both respect and appreciate the value of each of those 2 breeds. And then it is, like you mentioned, kind of making a decision, okay, what am I going to engage in and why, and walk us through that, the Angus versus Akaushi debate.
Yeah, absolutely. So we did move into Angus. Again, I can't say that I've got decades of experience there, but we did move into Angus after Beefmaster, more on the commercial space. We had some registered, actually, embryos that we bought from you. And, we dabbled in that a little bit, but, every breed in this country, for the most part, has a purpose. They serve a purpose, in your border areas in your country, those eared cattle are very, very important. Angus, though, it truly is. It's industry accepted. They grow well. They feed out well for the most part. We talk about sometimes an average. We lose track of that, right? Of what sometimes I'll say I lose track of it because I'm like, oh, I hear about a bull that's just an average marbling bull, and he's at 75, 80% marbling. Yeah. You know, oh, he only marbles, he's an average marbler. Well, that means he's only 75% marbling. It's like, good Lord.
Right.
You know, most of even the Angus industry is chasing 10, 15% at best at times. And here we are talking about an average bull that does that. But they grow well, they develop well. They are a great mass producing animal that's feeding really the beef industry at this time. And so, you know, where I think this breed excels, you know, is truly the quality of the meat. I mean, it's just a different eating experience in what you do. And I think when you get people to try it and just try the beef, it really becomes a different experience for them. I think it sets us completely. It's like, oh, this is what you're doing. Like I said, and so absolutely, I think, you know, our cattle, downside, don't grow as fast. You got to feed them a little bit longer. But, you know, as I know you visited with Michelle Johnson, as she said, what they found in studies that's coming out now is you may have to feed them longer, but they don't eat nearly as much as the others. So there's some efficiency in that as well. Maybe you're not feeding as long, or maybe you're not, but they're still growing and developing and doing what they do. So it's truly a special good and good product. And then, you know, it's so interesting to hear what people do within the industry, right? So many people here at the Akaushi convention that we've talked to, you know, hell, they make me want to sell any full blood animal I've got and just go get Angus and do F1s, because they're telling about the F1 and, you know, the F2. So many people think that F2, F3 is just the sweet spot for the meat and the beef business, because you still get, you know, some of that hybrid vigor from the outside for the Angus and the growth in what you do. So, you know, but again, I see the value of this breed. I see the long-term value of this animal. And again, being here really at what is really truly a young breed, and being able to be at the forefront of it and have an impact in it is really been fun, and it's been exciting. But yes, I just see, you know, the marketing matters, right? And what they've done, and God bless the Angus people. They're going through some interesting times now.
I'm going to get to hear about it all next week. I'm with the Angus Association at Beef Leaders Institute all next week, and it's going to be interesting to say the least.
That could go nuclear. I would love to. I can't wait to hear the stories that come out of those meetings. But anyway, I mean, look, they're a good established breed. They've set the bench for what the industry wants. And it's up to us, I think, to go out there and really prove. We have to be an ambassador for our breed. Every person that you talk to, everything, you're not only an ambassador for your organization, you're an ambassador for your breed. Yeah. And I love to see, in so many breeds, you see competition and so many people competing, and I'm not going to say wishing ill, but, you know, in order for me to succeed, they have to fail. Right. And I think the thing that sets this breed apart is that we are such a small portion of the industry. Sure. That there is room for every person in this breed to succeed, and we hope that every person in this breed succeeds. Absolutely. I hope every person in this breed succeeds.
Yeah.
And so
that's the feeling at this convention, I would say.
I think
you know what
so.
I mean? You sit down at a table, by and large, everybody is excited, and there's a goodwill, I would say, by and large in general, just amongst members.
Absolutely.
To move the breed forward.
It's been great. So yeah, the two breeds serve a very good purpose. They complement each other. They combine very well. It's a great base for putting our bulls on top of those cows and going out and making those F1s, F2s down the road, because they add such efficiency and they complement each other. Yeah. And so there's definitely value in both breeds. Again, my heart, my taste buds, my wallet are 100% in Akaushi though. And I absolutely see that. I'm excited for what we're doing.
Oh, yeah. Well, and it's one of those things. I look at both breeds. We do continue to be involved in both. And as I look at Akaushi and I look at Angus, backing up to 2017, it was all Angus for me. That was what I did, straight Angus, you know. And then Akaushi came in and was 10% of what we did. And then from 2018 till now, it's gone from 10% of what we did to it's 90% of what we do. The last two calf crops are 90% Akaushi. And the opportunities I see within each of the two breeds, both very much present, but they're very distinct. You know, I look at it, you talked about the small producer especially, and I think there's such a tremendous opportunity for the small producer in Akaushi. So if somebody comes to me and says, hey, I've got 1,000 cows, 5,000 cows, they got to all market all in one day and they need to roll on semis, Angus is the play, because it's big, it's simple, it's easy. If we're looking at commodity level scaled production, Angus is the fit. Now, if somebody comes in and is in the 80% plus of people that say, look, I've got 20 cows, I work a job, I love it, I'd love to scale it, I'd love to build it, I'd like to make it more profitable, but it is still limited in scope at this point, which is truthfully the bulk of cattle producers. North of 80% in the US have less than 25. And if we're looking at that group of people and you say, hey, Akaushi, like you mentioned, makes a fantastic end product. And if we can say, hey, instead of trying to compete with these megalithic Angus operations that are going to beat you, frankly, on cost of production because they're scaled, right? They're very, very large, very efficient producers. But what you can do that they're not going to do is pursue a specialty market. And that's the beauty of this Akaushi deal. If you come to someone and say, hey, I have Angus beef, well, so do 50 other producers within 50 miles, right? If you come to someone and say, hey, I have Akaushi beef, well, I mean, first they'll say Akawada, but then they'll try some.
Yeah. Listen, I've given away a lot of ground in order to get people to try it, and that has been that's been a big selling point in and of itself. But no, you're absolutely right. I think I was talking to my son about it again. I've got a 17-year-old son and a 7-year-old daughter, and I'd love to pass this along in some way, shape, or form to both of them. And so as we talk about the Akaushi and where we are, we went through I work, so for full work, I run a division or manage 3 states for a division of a bank. Okay. And so I travel quite a bit and I do, but again, my son's trying to decide what he wants to do from a college side. But we sat down and we talked about this cattle and talked about it. I was honored. It's one of those first times you talk to, the first time I think they say you talk to your son like a man is such an honorable time. And to have it be done about cattle, about the Akaushi cattle I love, was a completely mind-blowing experience. But we sat down and we did a bit, kind of a business summary of what we're doing and what we can do. And, those Angus calves that I've got out there, those commercial Angus calves, there's always going to be a ceiling for what you can do for them. Sure. There's you're competing, as you said, with 50 other producers out there producing farm-raised Angus beef. But I mean, when you do the math of it, if you get a high percentage full blood or purebred even carcass, that is, that could be a $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 carcass possibly. The ceiling on this breed is so much higher. Right. So when you are a small breeder and you're looking at how do I maximize my dollar and my efficiency, that's where we're focusing as a program. Is that look, if we can get up to 50, 60 head of mama cows, if we can set up a feed facility where we're feeding out, 75 to 90 head of these calves, and then we're able to either process them and sell them to customers directly, wholesale them as fats, and what we've got to do, the growth from there and the profit becomes the focus of what we do, and then it becomes a family endeavor. Right. Then it becomes I don't have to have a site. This is what I can do full time, and then we grow from there. And that's what we're excited about, and what I see the potential for any small breeder to be able to move towards that. But the long game, you got to play the long game with this breed. There's no, and it happened in Beefmaster. I've talked about it in posts where Lassiter's owned the Foundation Beefmaster Association and Beefmaster Breeders Universal. When they came together finally, when they quit bickering and fighting and pushing against each other, which again, that's a whole different podcast to talk about for this breed. Sure. But when they came together, the value of those cattle, literally sales shot up 25% across the board. Everybody and their brother that was just looking at the cattle jumped in. And you saw a lot of bad actors come into the breed. You saw a lot of people trying to make fast money. Yeah. And, you see that in this breed too. Sure. And you see a lot of people, especially in COVID, during the COVID pandemic, I think 2019 to 2020, where you could take any average cow, and because she had papers as an Akaushi, she was a $12,000 animal. Yeah. You saw a lot of people get in, and I think there's always going to be a cycle of people coming in and coming out. But advice, again, as I always say to those, is if you're going to do it, you got to have the long game in this breed. Right. You have to have a vision of not only treating people well and building a client base as you have. Yeah. You've done an amazing job, I think taking your animals and finding the niche in the market. You've got animals that are and we're maybe taking a tangent on you.
No, please do.
But we've got you've got animals that go toward that foundation breeder and those people that want that foundation. And then you're highly focused on progressive pole breeding. And so I think those are 2 great directions that you're moving towards. You've got to plan, as I said. And I think any small breeder, you got to have that plan. You got to have that long game in doing what you do. And I see so many people, either, turn over or give up too quick or don't. And I would just tell anybody doing that, stay the course, because this breed is, I think, the general feeling I get out there is this breed's set to take off again, but the right way. I think there's a lot of people that are doing the right thing. I think you got a lot of people with that long-term vision. And I'm definitely excited for where we are and what we do.
Oh,
what we're
yeah,
doing.
absolutely. And I look at Akaushi at large and the opportunities going forward. And like you mentioned, it has to be a long-term game because the generation interval on cows is slow. These aren't pigs. These aren't chickens. These aren't rabbits. We're not going to roll generations every couple weeks or months or years. It is a years long, if not decades long process to really genuinely create genetic change. And just due to the physiology of cows, right? It is a 9-month gestation interval. They are 2 years old before they have their first calf. Like, it's years long to move genetics in any given direction, much less really measure, if it did we or did we not affect the genetic change we were desiring. And so I think people do have to take that long-term approach and just decide, where is it I really want to go? But I think there's so much opportunity in the beef end of this deal, specifically to sell Akaushi beef. I mean, it's even talking to Heart Brands. I was talking to Jordan Beeman this morning here on the podcast, and Jordan was talking to me about killing 400 head a week, and they'll still sell out, and there is an opportunity to move the beef in this industry. There just is. And even for Heart Brand's program, going from being really limited in scale when they first started to killing the number of animals they are now, it just takes time. It's been a 15-year process for them from the front edge of that till now. But I think that the opportunity is present for people to sell beef. And I think if people don't come in the trap, and it's an easy pitfall to get into, like you mentioned, kind of the quick, easy money, or I'm going to roll this, or I'm going to whatever. Don't jump in and just assume that, yep, I'm immediately going to have an embryo market, or jump in and say, I'm immediately going to have a bull market, or I'm immediately going to sell my animals for the exact same amount I see an established program selling them for. But come into it and say, look, in the long term, there is a lot of value, even just in the beef, just for the culls, just for the stuff that didn't work out, wasn't worth breeding. There's value in the beef. And if you'll take that long-term approach, establish a program, move the cattle forward, figure out your targets, find your 6 essentials. I mean, I would call that a takeaway from that Beefmaster breed at large. Find your 6 essentials, breed for them, and in the long term, I think you can make some genetic change. So looking at Independence Cattle Company, looking at the animals that you're running right now, Travis, walk us through what that herd looks like today, animals that you're excited about, cows, bulls, and where you see it going forward.
Well, we kind of, again, it was a search, right? When we were looking for how do we identify within this breed what works? And you can talk to 100 different people even at this convention and get 100 different answers on, well, I heard this bull marbles and this bull marbles and that bull. So we took a very slow approach to getting truly started and trying to find, show me stakes, show me cattle, show me fertility. What do you have? And so, I saw a sale online. I bought some embryos from you and looked in some semen and other things. But, when Larry Asherman's sale first came up a few years back, I was like, he had pictures of the stakes on there. I called Larry. He's like, let me send you some photos of this and what they do. He AI'd 10 of his heifers and 9 of them stuck because he was watching the right way. And just every checkbox I needed, he had in his cattle. Yeah. And so we bought 2 donors from him, and that was really where we started, trying to do some embryo work. I think we are now, moving to a place where we've got about 20 embryo calves due this year.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's fun to start, but, again, where we're going is, I think, exciting. But we've got, about 20 full-blood to purebred females now. We are breeding with a bull that I got from a good friend of mine, Rob Cullen, that he bought as a pregnancy from you, actually, the big slick bull that we're selling some semen on here today. And so we've been really excited with that bull. He is a heterozygous pole bull. Yes. I bought him not because he was heterozygous. I bought him because that bull had great maternal traits out of your Rushaw 121 cow. Yes, again, as we talk about the total package, he was just perfectly correct, great set of hips, matched his stride, had a back as wide as this table, was just checked every box that I was looking for in a bull. Oh, and by the way, he happened to be heterozygous pole, right, which is going to add some pole. And again, it wasn't that single trait selection of I just have to have a pole bull. It was trying to work into just the total overall process. So we've got about 20 embryo calves. We've got about 15 calves coming from slick. So we'll be at about 35 this year. we're getting pretty aggressive next year. The goal is to try to put in 100 embryos in our program. What we got to do. Commercial cattle prices are working against me when it comes to buying recips right now.
We're at peak.
Great time for those commercial breeders to be selling. Maybe not a great time to be selling to me, because those, when you've got a commercial pair that's a mediocre pair selling for $4,800, pretty hard to go out there and for me as a buyer to do that. But we've got some things in motion that are going to work. But we want to put in about 100 embryos next year and leapfrog. And so where we're going is we've got a donor. We call her Paloma. She's a rhubarb daughter out of the 7228 Z cow, which was one of Larry's foundation cows. I'm sorry, she's out of the 754Y cow, which was a Umi granddaughter. And so checked a lot of boxes for us there in the fertility and the meat and the muscling. We have eight daughters of her on the ground now, 4 of which are, I've had people come out and say, those 2 or 3, you should really, those are potential donor style type cows. We're going to continue to mass produce from those lines and continue to grow because, again, they check the boxes. She checks the boxes I want. I think she's passed that along in her daughters. Yeah. And so we're going to grow from there. But we've got an exciting, just I think where we're going is really great. And then, you mentioned chickens. We raised chickens for Tyson. And,
oh, really?
Growing up. Yeah, we had chickens for Tyson. Yep. And, it wasn't many. We had 3 broiler houses. We moved 60,000 birds every 8 weeks. So you're talking about, it sounds like a lot, but really in chicken terms, that was...
60,000 of anything just sounds like a lot.
It is. Well, and when you got to clean up in the middle of summer, when you got to clean litter out of a house in 100-degree humidity in the middle of August, it hits you pretty hard. Yeah. But we've got 2 broiler houses. I've got one that two of them left of the 3 we had, and we're going to build a good feed out facility for our cattle there. And so we want to be at a point where we're moving anywhere. From 50 to 75 fats at any given time, where we're growing them up to go to market and, again, either sell ourselves, sell on the hoof as fats, or move from there. But that's ultimately our plan. And so I think for us, we've taken the approach that you have to look at the steak first. Yeah. And then you work backwards. How do you get there? Well, then you've got the good fats. Well, how do you get the good fats? Well, then you've got to get the good genetics. How do you identify the good genetics that are going to make those good fats? And that's what we've tried to work into, starting from what the consumer's going to want on the plate, all the way back to what we want. So eventually, we're going to be at about 60 to 70 head, like I said, of brood cows. Yeah. And then, we'll probably buy from friends of ours, maybe an additional 30 to 40 head of calves to feed out. And then we're going to grow that on the place and really make that what I think is an exciting opportunity. And I think from there, we've got potential to have the family get involved. I've got potential to get my son involved in that. It'd be something I can pass to my daughter and continue to grow it. Because, again, when independence means a lot to me. Being able to be free to do what we want to do as a breeder. And I think this breed, really embodies that. I think this breed allows a small producer to remain independent, to not be reliable on the things you've got to do, and to give you the value to be able to stay in operation. So we're excited about the future and where we are. Land prices just continue to quadruple almost down daily where we are, in that central Texas area. But we're going to grow land-wise. We're going to grow facility-wise. The future is really bright for where we're headed, and we've got, like I said, that really strong plan that we believe in. Yeah. That we're going to go out and execute.
Absolutely, I love that. And I think having the direction, it is impossible to get to where you want to go if you don't know where you want to go. So I love that you have a defined plan, where you want to go, how you're going to get there. So looking specifically at Paloma and Big Slick, looking at those 2, what is it about those 2 animals that makes you want to double down on them? I appreciate you mentioning, like on Big Slick, I love that you've tied into that bull. I'm excited that he's ended up with you. Kind of fun that we're sitting here at Akiushi Convention. It was 3 years ago at Akiushi Convention that I sold Big Slick as a pregnancy to Rob Cullen. Yeah. And then he calved him and raised him and ended up with you. And I'm excited to see that you have him because he's got greatness on the top and bottom side of that pedigree, being the first Mr. Clean Son registered in the Akiushi database. And then with the cow he's got behind him, a direct Rushaw daughter, Rushaw over Hikari, over Judah, over Homare. So you're straight foundation on the bottom side, you're cutting edge polled on the top. beautifully built bull, like you'd mentioned, polled, and then you've got that milk coming from the dam. That's a cow that's weaned a 700-pound calf on her own. I mean, there's a lot that excites me about Big Slick, but as you look at Big Slick and as you look at Paloma, what is it that excites you about those animals for you to want to tie into them and build around them?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, we've got I'm itching to put these embryos in, but we've got about 20 embryos out of her and Big Slick made, half of which are sexed females, which are going to be a huge part of our herd, I think, going forward. But you know, that Paloma cow, just going back, she just, I mean, again, every part of those 6 essentials you mentioned, for me, she's checked the box. Yeah. The only thing I haven't got, Larry's got pictures, Larry Ashman has pictures of full flush mates out of her that were prime plus. Yeah. And so, you know, while she is not, again, she's a rhubarb daughter out of that 754Y cow, which is Tamaroo by Shigamaroo by Umi. And again, she's long as a freight train. She's almost as wide as she is long. You know, she had her calf naturally, last calf, and I've never seen that calf 6 feet from her. She left it up in the woods one time when I was putting out hay, and the second she literally looked around and couldn't find it, she hauled rear end up, got it, and brought it back, and I've never seen it off her side. Yeah. It's going to be a hard weaning when I have to wean that calf on both of them, but she's such a good mom. She's got high maternal traits. That calf is really big for her age. Yeah. She's fertile. She's docile. She's got everything that I'm looking for, you know, from a side of you know, from a donor cow. She's just that one that you just want to just replicate. Yeah, yeah. And I'm very happy to own her. I'm very lucky to have him. And then Big Slick, I think the interesting thing about him, you know, one thing you haven't mentioned is that Rusha 121 cow is, I think, your 3rd highest ranking.
She's one of our high marbling cows. Yes. Yep.
Yeah, and so we, you know, it's hard in ultrasound to really tell what you're getting on these cattle. Yeah. But we were very pleased when we did ultrasound and with the results we got. Yes. He's got a really big ribeye. He's got what I think is some pretty promising marbling numbers. Yeah. And I think that's a big question, whether it's polled, whether it's horned, you know, in any bull you look at, you know, do you really have, you know, what are you adding to it? And one thing I'll tell you when you ask about what I'm excited about Big Slick, you know, I don't think there's one bull that's going to solve all your problems. And I think you find that one bull, and if anybody tells you out there, if anybody's listening to this, and somebody tells you they've got just that perfect solution bull that'll check every box, you're being fed something. Because each of these bulls will improve you should be breeding anyway, a little bit of each one, because each bull will do a little something different. Sure. And you know, some will do several things different, but they're not going to do all things for you. Yeah. And the thing I like about this bull, as you stated, you know, his dam weans a 700-pound calf. I really think in this breed we can afford. We don't want to go the way where we're just, again, single trait selecting, but I'm excited about the potential to have daughters in my herd that milk and will wean a big calf, or at least a bigger calf. Yeah. To me, that gets them to the feed bunk growing better. It gets them up and going. They're not getting pushed around if they're with other cattle. I'm excited about the milk and maternal. I'm excited about the marbling he brings. The structure of the bull, and really one thing that I think this breed can really afford is, and it sounds crazy maybe, is the hip structure. I think, you know, if you get a bull that really can track his stride, is not post-legged, is not, you know, as you know, it's got some flexibility in his hips to move. As we begin to expand this breed and we get commercial breeders interested in this breed, as we get other people coming from other breeds, there's certain expectations we've got. You've told me before, you know, hey, look, you know, whether polled matters to you or not or whatever, in my country, the Angus breeders that are coming from Angus, they demand it.
It is 100%. We have not dehorned a calf in 50 years, and we are not about to start.
There you go. Yep. There you go. And in our area, with this screw worm coming up from Mexico, to me, the threat of like, if I can get them polled, it becomes even more
life
valuable.
Or death. Yes. If you get in a setting where you have New World screwworm come into Texas and you have to dehorn calves versus not having to dehorn calves, that is dead calf versus live calf level stuff.
It can be truly a killer, and so that's an important thing for me too, to eventually build towards that. But I think he checks a lot of the boxes that I think right away, when I ask myself, what do I have to improve in my cattle? I think the bull does the things that I want him to do. Yeah. You know, and then as we get those heifers, we evaluate, how did they grow? How did they do? And then we'll pick matings on those individual animals to improve that. Yeah. And again, I've bought some semen from you recently on that polled Hikari bull you've got. I think eventually him or sons from him will be a great compliment. I want to put that bull on the Paloma cow. I've got another donor I got from Larry that I call Miss Ace that we're definitely putting him on because she's got depth and body and width, and I know he's got the length and class. If we can get that depth and stretch them out, I'm really excited for the future and doing that. And so those two individuals to me check my 6 essentials.
Yeah.
And the bull, I think, brings an emphasis on the maternal side and the structure side, as well as being polled. Heterozygous, we'll get some polled out, we'll get some horned, but we'll get some polled. And again, I'm just excited to build off those individuals and bringing in what I think are 2 really good programs in yours and in Larry Asherman's together in ours. And of course, we've got a lot of Heart brand breeding in the cattle that we own as well. Some great animals. But you mentioned something too, longevity.
Yeah.
The longevity of these cows is just an untalked about trait.
Yeah.
And so
It's a big deal.
in identifying these cows too, we look for them being out of donors that are maybe 11, 12, 13 years old that are still producing.
Yeah.
And both of their dams are still in production. Both of them are still moving forward at an old age, producing great cattle. And I think that's an unsung trait of this breed that really gets often overlooked.
That's a huge deal. You're a banker. How much does depreciation matter as far as depreciation cost? If I can depreciate an asset over 12 years in a cow versus depreciate an asset over 6 years in a cow, just speaking finance, speaking like I'm talking to my banker, that matters.
Well, and you think about when you've got a pasture, the turnover of a cow is, and I think the profitability I heard in a commercial cow, she's not profitable until she's a 6-year-old.
That's correct. And they usually figure it'll take 6 years just to cover your replacement cost before you actually start making any money.
And then you color it at 10, 11, 12 maybe. Mm-hmm. And if you've got cattle, I went to a gentleman, a friend of mine in Victoria that I met, and he bought some cattle that they were culling that were full-blood Akaushi that were 12 years old that a breeder was culling, and his bull, and he bought them both and took them out to place. He goes, well, maybe I'll get them for 2 or 3 years. They're 18 and 19 years old, and they're still breeding.
Yes.
And they're still going.
Yep.
And it's just something that we don't talk about. Maybe that's an anomaly, but I hear it more and more in this breed.
18-year-old cows. It took me 2 years, and I don't know how many thousands of miles to get just a few teenage Angus cows that had calved every year back to back to back to back. I went over to Heart brand the one day, and they had a whole pasture of 18-year-old cows sucking calves. You know what I mean? Like, it's unheard of in other breeds.
Yeah. And when you talk about not having to turn over your pasture, if you get a set of animals that check your box, that fit your 6 essential, and they are in your pasture for 18 years, producing what you need.
You bet.
Holy goodness. You're telling me I don't have to, in 10 years, I'm not having to turn over my herd, or
right.
you should always be culling the bottom 10% of your herd.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
Sure.
But you're always striving to improve. But if you're telling me that I got a pasture full of these cattle that I can hold on to for 15 plus years, man, the efficiency and the ROI
huge.
On what you're doing,
huge.
It's massive. And so that's just another value add that time will tell whether we can achieve that or not. But that's definitely a goal when selecting these cows that we solve for longevity that we really want to mass produce.
Right.
And when people buy from me, I want them to know that, hey man, this guy's really put a lot of thought, same as you. That this guy's put a lot of thought into what he's done, and he's picked some really good animals to build off of and replicate from.
You bet.
And that is what I'm trying to do in our program. And I'm very proud of the small but what I think will soon be mighty program.
You bet.
Down in Central Texas. So.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I really appreciate about your program is you've been willing to double down on animals you've identified. You have said, hey, Paloma and Big Slick, these are animals, and obviously there's others, and there will be more, and it'll change, and they'll re-rank and whatever. But you are willing to double down on animals that you've identified, that you've said they're good, that you've said they fit your program. And to me, that personifies Independence Cattle Company in the sense that I think too often for a new breeder, they want to come in and they say, well, I want to breed animals that are just like Legendary, or just like Christensen, or just like whoever. Whatever, name breeder X, right? I want to make them just like, I saw that so-and-so sold such and such an animal for such and such an amount. Don't try to be breeder X, is kind of what I would say. Don't try to be another program. Don't try to be a copycat. Don't try to be a clone. Don't try to do the exact same thing someone else did. I think having that that wherewithal to say, hey, you're going to stand on your own 2 feet, and you said they're good, you're doubling down on them, you're going to use those animals, and you're saying, hey, Big Slick and Paloma, these are some animals you're going to double down on. I think that is an example that other new breeders could learn from, because if someone else, and I'll just use my program as an example, if someone else, anyone that comes into the breed, if they just tried to do the exact same thing I'm doing, well, frankly, I'm already doing it. Like, I want to see new breeders come in and, sure, take bits and pieces from my program, take bits and pieces from other programs, but define what is it you want to do, because what we need is more programs, not more multipliers of trying to be also ran, the Equate brand of, of the name brand, right? Or whatever else it may be. And I appreciate that that's something you've done, to kind of mark out your own course there. Is there anything in particular that, I guess, as we kind of wrap up here, that you would say to a new breeder that's looking at doing, just like you, they're just starting into it, they're building small, hoping to get bigger? What else would you say to those people here in closing, as far as kind of how to go about that? Any final words or thoughts for them?
I would just say, as I said, and I've said this to a lot of people before, make a plan. Yeah. And strategize for where you want to be and what you want to do, and then don't take your eye off the ball. Yeah. I think that's very important. We get shiny keys dangled at us all the time as breeders, and different directions and different things, and this bull and that bull, and I'm going to do this. Well, now I'm thinking about doing that. Define what you want to do and stay the course.
Yeah.
And then
absolutely. Say that again. What was that you just said?
Define what you want to do and stay the course.
I like that. There you go.
Yep. Absolutely. And I'll tell you, I have cattle in my program right now that are quite frankly, and I don't mean this, they're out of Hart brand numbered bulls, out of Hart brand numbered cows that, you recognize some of the names back in the pedigree, but they're not up front. Sure. But I've got, an animal that comes to mind in particular. She backs up on her calving interval every 45 days. She weans a calf at 575 pounds. The calf looks great. She's a great mother. She breeds right back. She gives you everything you've got to do. And so those traits that you've got, to me, I would pay $10,000 to $12,000 for that cow. Right. As opposed, that's proven on the actual functionality of these cattle and the traits, versus something that's just, it's got pedigree, or it's just whatever, those types of things.
Well, I think to just back you up there, because I 100% agree, to say you would double down on that cow because of what she is, instead of what the pedigree said she should have been, or like, well, it's got this cool foundation bull or that cool foundation bull or whatever it may be. I think that and I apologize, I'm jumping right into the middle of what you're saying there. I'm running right over top of you, but it's important what you said there, that I think if people can value the animal, I'm going to multiply it because it is good, because it is weaning a heavy calf, and it's backing up on its calving date, and it's taking great care, it's doing business, it's doing what it is bred to do. That cow that is doing what she should is worth more than one that just, pedigree said she should have been, or that was cool, or like, are we collecting Pokemon cards or breeding cows? You know what I mean?
That's exactly right. Yep. Good analogy.
Multiply the ones that are good because they are good, whether they have a cool pedigree or whether it is. You say, well, it's kind of generic and or hard for me to interpret, but I know this cow is good. Let's multiply that.
That's it. Because at the end of the day, we need good cattle to make good females, to make good bulls, to put the stakes on the plate. And across the board, when you identify it, be proud of it, let people know. Yes. And the other thing I would just say in closing, one thing I've heard you do in your podcast, one thing I've tried to do in whatever these Facebook posts I've done is again, the best thing you can do is really work to help people. Yeah. You want to try to help people get going, and you want to try to talk to people. And again, like you mentioned, be a lifelong learner. Like, none of us know, there's nothing. If I go through every single week and I haven't learned something, shame on me. Right. And so you have to keep, and you do it in the breed all the time too. I learn something new all the time from talking to people, or you get new pieces of data. And so again, just pleased to be here, and really proud to be a part of this breed, and really proud to see it grow, and to work with people like yourself and the people at this convention that just are just really some of the nicest, greatest people I've met.
You bet.
And I'm just excited to be here and excited to see what this breed holds.
Absolutely. Well, and I appreciate you, Travis. I appreciate you putting the effort you do into those posts that you put out. I appreciate the help you provide to new breeders. I think you bring an exciting perspective to the table, an exciting program to the table. I look forward to seeing what those Big Slick Paloma calves turn out like, and the Big Slicks at large, and excited to see the future of your program. And I hope that your program, my program and the program of anyone listening, that each of us can develop and breed new cattle that will provide value for other breeders. So that hopefully there's stuff coming from your program to mine, mine to yours. That exchange of information and genetics is what drives the whole thing forward.
We have to move forward.
Yeah.
We can't, I mean, I love the foundation genetics. I love the old school breedings in the cows, but we have to breed forward. You do a great job of that in your breeding and adopting the poles and the cattle and not just staying on top of, well, you know, I keep going back to the bull that, you know, that came back. And I love Big Al. I love Hikari. I love Shigeru. Great animals, but each generation of cattle has to improve itself.
Absolutely.
And you do, and I think you do a great job of that. I'm trying to do that with a great job of that. I'm trying to look forward, not backwards.
Yep.
And that's an important thing for our breeders to remember as well. So again, very excited for what we got going and where we're going to be, I think, all of us together.
Absolutely, my friend. And I appreciate you taking the time and look forward to seeing how everything sells tonight at the Hakushi Convention auction.
Excited, man. Good luck to you and to all the consigners, myself included. And man, let's make it a great night.
Sounds good, buddy. Hey, best of luck.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate your
Yes,
report.
sir.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Got Any Cows podcast. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. And visit us anytime at gotanycows.com.